Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to 168 Hours, your weekly roundup of the top local stories. I'm Abdullah Ahil, your host for the evening. Stay tuned. President Dr. Mohammad Muiz reaffirms government's unwavering commitment to building a healthier and safer Maldives while continuing to support and contribute to global efforts in addressing pressing challenges. Taking to his official X account to mark the International Day Against Drug Abuse and Illicit Trafficking, the president called for united global action to tackle the deep-rooted issues of drug abuse and trafficking. He noted that the Maldives is making significant progress through a unified national framework that brings together law enforcement, prevention, treatment, and reintegration. In his message, the president highlighted the government's strong commitment to supporting individuals on their journey of recovery and reintegration, noting plans to establish new rehabilitation centers in Envelidu, Kakashidu, and Elgan as part of these efforts. He also emphasized the government's goal of ensuring that all individuals in recovery have access to the support and resources needed to reintegrate into society, secure meaningful employment, and maintain long-term well-being through comprehensive aftercare and continuous monitoring. President Dr. Mohammad Muiz reaffirms that his administration remains on course to deliver on its pledge of extending the Raja Transport Link or RTL ferry services to every atoll across the country by year's end, a key component of his government's broader agenda to improve intra-island accessibility and public service delivery. The commitment was underscored by the formal launch of ferry operations in Ra Atoll, the 10th atoll to join the expanding RTL network. In a message posted on X, President Muiz congratulated the residents and pointed to a promise he made in January during a visit to Ungu Faru that services would begin in Ra Atoll by the end of June and in Ba Atoll before July's close. The new launch aligns with that schedule, while preparations for Ba Atoll are now underway. The broader RTL project, managed by the Maldives Transport and Contracting Company or MTCC, is designed to offer accessible, affordable maritime transport across the country. Implementation is being carried out in phases, with the country divided into 6 zones to streamline operations. Ra Atoll, home to approximately 24,000 residents across 15 inhabited islands, is expected to benefit significantly from the service. MTCC has begun operations with a 1-week complimentary trial, after which standard fare-based services are scheduled to commence on the 3rd of July. The Ministry of Transport and Civil Aviation has confirmed that within the atoll, 3 routes are in operation. 2 speedboats currently serve these routes, mapped to reflect prevailing travel patterns and operating daily. Passengers can access schedules, fares, and digital booking options via the RTL website and mobile application. The vessels have been designed with passenger comfort in mind and are operated by captains and crews who have received specialized training. President Dr. Mohammad Muiz reaffirms his administration's commitment to empowering micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises or MSMEs in the Maldives. In a message shared on his social media platforms to mark this year's Micro, Small, and Medium-Sized Enterprises Day, President Dr. Muiz hailed the entrepreneurs and innovators driving sustainable growth across our islands and around the world. The president assured that the government remained committed to empowering MSMEs through inclusive financing and improved access to markets. Building on the success of Maldives Expo 2025, he said the government will continue to strengthen the ecosystem in which small businesses can thrive. The government, since taking office in November 2023, has put in a lot of effort towards promoting and developing small and medium enterprises in the country. One of the key achievements in these efforts is the Maldives Expo 2025 held last month, designed to stimulate national productivity and economic growth, providing a space for both traditional craftsmanship and modern innovation to be celebrated and sustained. In addition, the government has facilitated opportunities of financing and improved access to markets, along with key legislative amendments to offer enhanced protection of the MSMEs across the country. President Dr. Mohammad Muiz, accompanied by First Lady Sajida Mohamad, undertakes a 4-day state visit to Singapore, aiming to deepen long-standing bilateral relations and advance development cooperation between the two island nations.
President Dr. Mohammad Muiz, accompanied by First Lady Sajida Mohamad, undertakes a 4-day state visit to Singapore, aiming to deepen long-standing bilateral relations and advance development cooperation between the two islands. The invitation from President Tharman Shanmugaratnam comes as both countries continue to strengthen ties forged nearly 5 decades ago. Formal diplomatic relations were established on 20th February 1975. According to the President's office, high-level meetings are expected to include talks with President Tharman, Prime Minister Lawrence Wong, and senior cabinet members. Discussions are expected to focus on expanding bilateral cooperation and identifying areas of mutual benefit. An economic forum will bring President Muizu together with leaders of Singapore's private sector. The event is aimed at fostering investment opportunities and strengthening trade links. According to the President's office, several memoranda of understanding are anticipated, marking tangible progress in institutional partnerships. Engagements will also extend to the Maldivian community in Singapore. The President is scheduled to meet members of the diaspora, reflecting the government's emphasis on supporting citizens living abroad.
The first state visit by President Dr. Mohammad Muiz and First Lady Sajida Mohamad to Singapore unlocks new dimensions to ties between the two countries, with multiple high-level discussions and cooperation agreements signed during the visit. President Dr. Muiz undertook the visit from the 29th of June to the 2nd of July at the invitation of Tharman Shanmugaratnam, President of Singapore. During the visit, an orchid hybrid was named after President Dr. Muiz and First Lady Sajida Mohamad at the National Orchid Garden of Singapore. The National Orchid Garden has a long tradition of naming orchid hybrids after visiting state dignitaries. Following the visit to the National Orchid Garden, the President and First Lady were accorded the ceremonial welcome at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs of Singapore. During the visit, President Dr. Muiz held discussions with President Shanmugaratnam and Prime Minister Lawrence Wong on strengthening bilateral ties. Several memoranda of understanding were signed in areas including capacity building, environmental development, education, and collaboration with the Singapore Cooperation Enterprise. Two key agreements were also signed, one with Henley & Partners on a residence by investment program and another with APM SPV Private Limited for Project Solar City. As this year marks 50 years of diplomatic relations between the Maldives and Singapore, President Dr. Muiz presented a commemorative book to President Shanmugaratnam reflecting on 5 decades of partnership and development. The two leaders also unveiled commemorative stamps to celebrate the milestone. A key highlight of the visit was the Maldives-Singapore Business Forum, attended by more than 200 business leaders from both countries. The forum also served to promote investment opportunities aligned with the government's Vision 2040. The President and First Lady also met with members of the Maldivian community in Singapore, and the visit included tours of key institutions such as the Institute of Technical Education, the Urban Redevelopment Authority, Tuas Port, the Peranakan Museum, and the Singapore Food Agency. According to the government, this inaugural state visit underscores a renewed commitment to deepening Maldives-Singapore cooperation, especially in key areas of trade and investment. A delegation from the Grand National Assembly of Turkey, comprising members of the Turkey-Maldives Interparliamentary Friendship Group, pays a courtesy call on President Dr. Mohammad Muiz at the President's office.
President Dr. Muizu, during a phone call, welcomed enhanced collaboration between the Interparliamentary Friendship Group and various government agencies in the Maldives. He also expressed his appreciation for the group's multi-party representation, describing it as a positive reflection of Turkey's vibrant political landscape. President Dr. Muizu reaffirmed the Maldives' continued support for Turkey and praised its leadership for its firm stance on the Palestinian cause, noting that the Maldives shares a similar resolute position. He further highlighted the importance of boosting bilateral cooperation, particularly in trade and people-to-people exchanges. The President also outlined the Maldives' key climate action priorities, including ongoing economic reforms, national adaptation efforts, and investments in renewable energy. The Turkish delegation emphasized their interest in expanding collaboration across sectors such as higher education, tourism, and agriculture. They also highlighted the importance of strengthening economic ties and advancing trade agreements. The delegation expressed pride in working with a brotherly Muslim nation and reaffirmed their commitment to upholding shared values and aspirations. The meeting concluded with both sides reaffirming their commitment to further strengthening the long-standing friendship between the Maldives and Turkey.
President Dr. Mohammad Muiz and Singaporean President Tharman Shanmugaratnam reaffirmed their commitment to strengthening bilateral ties with a focus on cooperation in areas such as education, renewable energy, and economic diversification. The pledge was made during a courtesy call by President Muiz held as part of his state visit to Singapore.
The call commenced with President Shanmugaratnam expressing his pleasure and appreciation for President Dr. Muiz undertaking the ongoing state visit, coinciding with the Golden Jubilee of diplomatic relations between the two nations. President Dr. Muiz, in turn, conveyed his gratitude to President Shanmugaratnam and the government of Singapore for the warm welcome and generous hospitality extended during his visit. During the call, the two leaders reflected on the 50 years of diplomatic relations between the Maldives and Singapore, affirming their commitment to further strengthening bilateral cooperation. They highlighted the enduring people-to-people ties and discussed avenues to revitalize mutually beneficial initiatives in areas such as training and education, sustainable energy production from renewable sources, and infrastructure development. The discussion also touched on enhancing the fisheries sector in the Maldives and pursuing efforts to diversify the economy beyond traditional tourism. Following the call, President Dr. Muiz presented President Shanmugaratnam with the commemorative book chronicling the milestones in the Maldives-Singapore relations over the past 5 decades since the formal establishment of diplomatic ties on 20th February 1975.
Maldives hosts a business forum in Singapore seeking to broaden its economic base, draws more than 200 prospective investors, and present a comprehensive portfolio of development opportunities to international stakeholders. President Dr. Mohammad Muiz led the Maldives-Singapore Business Forum, convened to mark the 50th anniversary of diplomatic relations between the two nations and attended by several senior Maldivian cabinet ministers. Grace Fu Hai Yen, Singapore's Minister for Sustainability and the Environment, addressed the gathering as guest of honor. The event was framed as part of a wider strategy by the Muiz administration to attract foreign capital and reduce the nation's long-standing dependence on tourism. Officials detailed prospective investment avenues across a range of sectors, including special economic zones, fisheries, maritime services, healthcare, renewable energy, and higher education. Among the marquee initiatives shared with the attendees were the Ras Malay Urban Development and the expansive Golifalu project. Plans to relocate the Malay commercial port to Tilafushi were also discussed, alongside strategic bunkering and port infrastructure aimed at strengthening the Maldives' regional maritime position. Tourism-focused proposals featured prominently in the presentations. These included a plan to establish a world-class theme park as well as maritime projects such as the Uligamo Yacht Marina and a dedicated harbor for sports fishing. The healthcare sector was another key area of emphasis. Highlights included the proposed construction of a specialized cancer hospital and a nationwide effort to digitize health services. Opportunities in pharmaceutical manufacturing and tertiary education were also outlined. A formal ceremony during the event marked the 5-decade milestone of Maldives-Singapore relations. President Muiz personally presented commemorative plaques to selected guests in recognition of the long-standing bilateral partnership. The Singapore Forum extended a pattern of similar initiatives by the government to promote international investment. Recent forums in China, the United Arab Emirates, Malaysia, and India reflect a coordinated effort to elevate the Maldives' global economic profile. Vice President Hossain Mohammad Latif delivers an unequivocal appeal for strengthened international cooperation to close the enduring gap in ocean financing, warning that climate change presents an existential threat to small island developing states. The Vice President's remarks came at a high-level side event at the 4th International Conference on Financing for Development, framing the Indian Ocean as a lifeline to the Maldives. Vice President Latif highlighted its central role in securing national food supplies and sustaining livelihoods, particularly within the country's tourism-driven economy. He expressed alarm over the increasing prevalence of mass coral bleaching and denounced the chronic underinvestment in Sustainable Development Goal 14 as unacceptable and unsustainable. Responding to those mounting ecological technological and financial pressures, the Maldives announced two targeted financing mechanisms designed to bolster marine resilience and support coastal economies: a coral reef insurance scheme and a dedicated fund for micro, small, and medium enterprises active in the blue economy. The insurance initiative aims to quantify and price climate risk, offering financial safeguards against environmental shocks while protecting biodiversity. Designed as a blended finance instrument, it seeks to facilitate MSME access to capital, reduce lending risk, and cultivate a pipeline of investable climate-resilient ventures across the maritime sector. These objectives were further explored at a thematic side event titled Blended Finance Opportunities for Marine Biodiversity, co-convened by the Maldives and the United Nations Development Program. The forum brought together SIDS with rich marine ecosystems, nations often acutely vulnerable to climate impacts, to examine scalable blended finance models. A panel discussion following Vice President Latif's remarks spotlighted the practical dimensions of these financial instruments. Panelists include Fatimat Abdullah Kamaluddin, Deputy Chief Executive Officer of the Capital Market Development Authority; Charles Yu, Technical Specialist in Climate Finance and Investment at the UNDP; Yabenix Batista, Deputy Director of the Global Fund for Coral Reefs; and Georgia Rakis, Policy Lead for International Finance at the United Kingdom's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office. Their dialogue ranged from structuring effective regulatory frameworks to expanding blended finance platforms and incorporating risk-layering techniques that deliver shared value to governments, donors, and private investors alike. Vice President Latif closed by underscoring the urgency of overhauling global financial systems in the face of escalating climate disruptions. For SIDS, he said, quote, "Financing for development is a matter of our survival," unquote. The 4th International Conference on Financing for Development continues in Seville through the 3rd of July. The Minister of Tourism and Environment, Tariq Ibrahim, states that the government is progressing with plans to designate new biosphere reserves in Lamiani and Lama atolls, an initiative championed by President Dr. Mohammad Muiz as part of a broader effort to safeguard the nation's natural heritage. Minister said the initiative aligns with the President's pledge to expand the country's protected areas. That commitment was publicly underscored during a ceremony in Gan Lama Atoll held in observance of Environment Day. Addressing attendees, Minister Tariq confirmed that preparatory studies to establish a biosphere reserve in Laviani Atoll are currently underway. Related work in Lama Atoll, he noted, is also advancing. The President's wider environmental platform sets out plans to establish 3 additional biosphere reserves by the end of 2028. Minister Tariq explained that this expansion would significantly enhance the Maldives' environmental protection infrastructure, which currently consists of 3 biosphere reserves and 92 protected areas. Proposals for a 3rd new reserve, he added, are expected to be submitted within the coming year. In framing the government's objectives, Minister Tariq highlighted the urgency of environmental preservation and its close ties to national economic security. He cautioned that unchecked environmental degradation would negatively impact tourism in the Maldives, leading to economic repercussions. Reaffirming a shared obligation to future generations, he added, quote, "It is our responsibility to share a safe and delicate environment for future generations. For these 2 reasons, we must commit to environmental protection and to secure a safe environment for those who will come after us," unquote. The ministry's efforts to build public understanding are underway, said Minister Tariq, who noted that information campaigns coordinated with island and atoll councils are being developed to support environmental stewardship, with schools also expected to contribute meaningfully. Tourism's role in the national economy formed a final point of emphasis in the minister's remarks. He observed that roughly 80% of visitors are drawn to the Maldives by its natural beauty, underscoring the sector's heavy reliance on the preservation of the country's environmental integrity. And that's all we have for now. Thank you for watching 168 Hours. See you next time.